back to another day of Bible studies. We are continuing on through our study on peace. My name is Kevin Young. I have the privilege of leading here at Christ Table. If you'd like to know more about Christ Table, you can visit that URL right there, www.christstable.today. And if you're asking, I had a run in with a garage door a few days ago. So that's what's going on with the faith. Just overlook that, right? Now, if you'd like to know more about this study in particular, you can visit the URL right there, go.christstable.today/peace. There at that website, you're going to find information about this study and also a few downloadable resources there, absolutely free for you. One of them is a list of all of the days of the study as well as the readings that go along with that, so that'll help you follow along with us. But there is also a curriculum that walks through these days, all 32 of them that are in this peace study. It's a PDF. It's absolutely free. No strings attached. No email necessary. You can just download that for free at the website right there as our gift to you, because we want to put as many resources as possible in your hands. Now, I do want to say that if you have the financial ability, or if you want a nice printed bound copy of that resource, you can get that there by clicking the button that says get the box. Also, as a part of that box that we'll send you, there are other spiritual formation resources that go along with this study, a few gifts as well. That helps us financially if you participate in that way with us, but obviously we are completely okay with you just utilizing the resources for free as well. But if you find this helpful, would you consider financially partnering with us so that we can continue to bring these resources, studies, Sunday mornings, and ministry to those who are disillusioned, disappointed, done with the church? That would be helpful to us here at Christ Table. Now, one other thing that I want to make sure that you are aware of, this book, if you are struggling with faith or your journey through deconstruction, or know somebody who has doubts or questions or who is on the margins of faith, this book is written and just released a few days ago for people who are in that situation. Would love to get it in the hands of people who are in crisis, who are disappointed, disillusioned, done with the church, who have church trauma. This doesn't force a path or even say that you have to make reconstruction a part of your future, but it will help guide you in asking the right questions and give you some possible things to think about along the way as you make your journey through trauma, make your journey through doubt, make your journey through questions, make your journey through disappointment and disillusionment with the church. You can find out more about this resource, this book, by going to www.drkevinyoung.com. And I would appreciate it a lot if you would get that into people's hands. And even more so, if you have read it, if you've received it and read it, would you be willing to write a review of that on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Goodreads? It helps us get that book more visible to people who are in crisis and who need it. Thanks for doing that. drkevinyoung.com. So today we find ourselves continuing on through this journey through the places in the Bible that speak of peace. On day 9, we are in 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 11 to 13. We are jumping into the very end of a letter, a second letter to the church at Corinth from the Apostle Paul. Now, there is some scholarly conversation about this letter and whether or not it's actually two separate letters from Paul, or maybe one from Paul, one from somebody else, which one is which one's where. This is a tough letter, not necessarily theologically to understand, though that is there. There are some parts of this that are theologically messy, but really what is difficult about this letter is that it's just messy. It is written to a church that is messy and is trying to just kind of confront that mess head on. In fact, in the chapters just before we get to our reading here today in 2 Corinthians chapter 13, Paul, the author, has been very harsh, has been very forward. The tone has been very kind of abrasive and confrontational with the church. And so whenever we come to verse 11 of chapter 13, what we find is kind of a turn. And so a lot of folks have kind of registered some doubt as to whether or not Paul actually wrote this or what was the intent here, because it is kind of a left turn from where Paul has been before, from kind of this abrasive, hard-hitting, confrontational tone to something that is, well, let's just read it. Verse 11, "Dear brothers and sisters," after having said all of this that he said, I close my letter with these last words. Hey, be joyful. I know that I've taken you to task, but be joyful. Grow in maturity. Encourage each other. Live in harmony and peace. Then the God of love and peace will be with you. Greet each other with a sacred kiss. All of God's people here send you their greetings. And then there's a final sentence which you can read on your own in verse 14 if you want. Now, what Paul gives here, which we kind of have some history of Paul doing now that we're 9 days into this study, is Paul gives kind of a list of things that are good ideas for people who are followers of Christ. Like, he has gone into the weeds on the theologies and really kind of drawn some line in the sand. But at the end of the day, Paul kind of comes back and says, all of that being the case and all the difficulties and all the disagreements and disunity and problems and frustrations even that I have, Paul says, with where you are and how you're conducting yourselves, at the end of the day, there are some things that really I need you to know that set apart the Christians from the rest of the world. And it's not so much your theologies. It's not where you fall on these topics, even though I've been very direct about the ways in which you have done things wrong and really kind of gone up to the line and sometimes even over the line. At the end of the day, there are some things that are more important than those things. Be joyful. Grow in maturity. Encourage each other. Live in harmony and peace. And I love that harmony and peace are not the same thing, right? Like, peace is a step beyond harmony. Harmony requires you to change, right? To live in harmony oftentimes, but peace doesn't require the other person to change. It accepts where they are. And whenever you do that, whenever you live in these ways, then the God of love and peace will be with you. And I love the fact that Paul frames God as being a God of love and peace, a deity that is primarily identified by love and peace. That's generally not the ways that God-like figures or deities in any time, really, in human history have been thought of. And so this is a very unique God. Live in harmony and peace, and the God of love and peace will be with you. Now, there is an echo here of Jesus back in Mark chapter 9, and I just thought that I'd throw this passage up here. There is an echo here from Paul of what Jesus said when he's talking about salt is good for seasoning, but if it loses its flavor, how are you going to make it salty again? You must have the qualities of salt among you and live in peace with each other. And so Paul is essentially kind of reframing in a different way what Jesus has already said. You must, if you are going to live with each other, and if you are going to live in this world, you must live in peace with each other. Now, Paul is saying here, and Jesus is saying here, I think specifically, technically in the reading, with other Christians. But the truth of the matter is, I think that this is definitely able to be broadened out to living in peace with those around you who also are not Christians. And I will say, in my experience, maybe this has been yours as well, I will say that in my experience, it actually is much easier to live in peace with the people who are non-Christians as a Christian than it is for me to live in peace with the Christians. Like, the Christians are always fighting like cats and dogs. Christians are always fighting like adolescent teenagers. The Christians are always fighting like blasted fools with each other over the most foolish things. I find it far easier to live among the atheists and the agnostics and the Muslims and the Buddhists and the people in my neighborhood who have nothing to do with Jesus or want nothing to do with Jesus than it is oftentimes living with other Christians and living in peace with them. And so the call to live in peace with other people of the same belief system with you is probably a harder call than living with atheists. And oftentimes I'll be online and people will say, yeah, you shouldn't listen to Kevin because he's friends with atheists and agnostics. Hell yes, I'm friends with atheists and agnostics because they are far nicer than people like you. And yet, I'm called to live in peace in some way with you. And that can be difficult to do because oftentimes the people who we are called to live in peace with are not peaceful people and don't want to live in peace with us. I wish I had a lot of really great advice at how to live at peace with people who don't want to live at peace with you. And I'm talking again about Christians here. It's not easy to do. And if you know how to do that, then I would actually love for you in the comments or wherever you're watching this to actually let me know. How do I live in peace with other Christians who don't want to live at peace with me? The interesting thing about this passage is that this command, as we've said, kind of concludes the Mark 9 that Jesus, when he's talking about salt and living at peace with other people, that command concludes after a discourse, a conversation that began with the disciples disputing among themselves their status. Who's better, who's greatest, who's going to be at the right hand, the left hand of Jesus in eternity, in the kingdom of God. And it includes Jesus' warning about causing other believers to stumble as well. And what it essentially does here is it presents a peaceful fellowship as the model for discipleship relations. Jesus essentially seems to say, by placing this statement about peace among those who are believers with you, that this is the antidote to thinking more highly of yourself than you should. And also, if you don't do it, you're actually pushing people away from God. You're causing them, the verbiage here, to stumble rather than pulling them towards God. This makes sense. Who the heck would want what most Christians seem to have in the way that they treat other Christians? Who would want to be a part of this mess? If we can't treat each other better than we treat the rest of the world, who would ever want to be a part of that group? Yes, I will come to Christ. I just don't want to be a Christian, right? I mean, but why would I ever want to come to Christ if this is what happens whenever you come to Christ, as you begin treating other people this way? I don't want to be a part of any of that. So they reject not only Christians, but they reject Christianity and oftentimes end up rejecting Christ. Isn't this the journey of deconstruction for many people? They end up seeing the same things, people not living at peace with each other, fighting over things that don't seem to be worth fighting for. Who's the greatest among us, causing other people to stumble in the ways that they live and the things that they believe and the requirements that they have, the legalism that doesn't seem to match up what Jesus has. And other people say, I'm done with Christians and I'm done with Christianity, probably, and now I've got to see whether or not that means that I'm also done with Christ. This is how people end up in deconstruction, is because of the chaos and sheer lunacy of other Christians who are unable to live at peace with differing theologies, with differing ethnicities, differing vantage points and viewpoints, differing genders and sexualities. It's our way or the highway. And Jesus says, y'all, it's not your highway. It's my highway, the way. And on the way there shall be peace. So our activity for today on day 9 is to, on a piece of paper, or if you have that booklet, draw it on there. Draw a word on there. Draw it big. Space the letters further apart than normal. Take up the page. Make those big block letters. If it doesn't look good, if you're not an artist, don't worry about it. That's okay. Just do that. Draw a word on there. Space the letters a little further apart than normal, and just go to town, coloring and doodling, adding lines and curly cues or dots or whatever to give that word meaning or personality. It can be a word that is related to our study today. It can be a word that you just kind of come up with that is important and sitting in your mind and in your heart today. It can be something directly from the Bible reading for today. It doesn't matter what the word is, but take a word and let's reflect. Let's ruminate on that word, and let's allow our creativity today to inform the look of that word as we allow it to embed itself into our creativity and into our mind and into our heart. Well, it's been good to be with you today. Looking forward to being with you the rest of the week as we continue on through this peace study. Again, if you'd like the resources to download to be a part of this study, it's as simple as going to that URL right there, go.christstable.today/peace. Well, take care of yourself. Be safe out there. Try to be peaceful among those people who are not so peaceful. And I tell you, right now with what's going on in the world, that is a very difficult call, but there may be no more important call for Christians to stand up and in times of chaos and trauma and hate and disunity to be people of peace. Let that be us. Let that be you.